A warm welcome to all of you. Welcome to the session on machine learning in manufacturing. So today we are living in a very interesting time periods. It's not because of Corona, right? It's more because of the kind of technological advancements that we are seeing, right? And the next decade is going to define how the humankind is going to live for the next century, right? So that is the kind of influx point at which we are in right now. So if you look at the technological advancements, be it in the field of digital currencies, be it in the field of artificial intelligence, or even the technologies like quantum computing, right? And so there are various technologies which are going to redefine the way we are going to live, right? And therefore, it is essential that the current generation be familiar with what is happening with these new technologies and how they're going to impact our lives in the next few years, right? And this will not only help us in choosing the right career paths, but also how you can contribute to the country's growth, as well as in general how we advance. So with that background in mind, so today's session, we would like to give a high level overview to the manufacturing world, especially in the context of leveraging artificial intelligence, so that the industry 4.0, which we keep hearing about in manufacturing, is going to redefine, right, how we are going to see the new generation of products that will come into the market, right? So with that background in mind, so today we are going to cover a very high level introduction to the artificial intelligence and machine learning. So what they are and what can we do using these technologies, right? Especially we will go through one case study to give a better example or a better understanding of the concepts that we are going to learn. And then we will look at how the artificial intelligence or the machine learning, right, is currently applied in the manufacturing world. And of course, we also look at the state of the art technological developments that are happening in manufacturing. And then finally, we are going to see, and therefore the current generation, especially those who are looking for the career opportunities or right, the career advancements, how can they leverage this artificial intelligence to further their aspirations? So with that, brief agenda now. So we have been hearing about artificial intelligence or the machine learning, right? And we see this everywhere in newspapers or even in social media, internet. So there is a lot of buzz about it. But is it all theoretical in nature, or actually do we see any applications of it, right? And knowingly or unknowingly, right, we are already seeing these applications. So this is not a fad, right? For example, the face recognition that we see in mobile phones, or the Alexas of the world that we hear, right? We see and we are using already. And especially if you look at the manufacturing, the machine vision, right, applications. So when you say machine vision, so as the name suggests, how the machinery can actually mimic the vision capabilities of human beings, right, in order to monitor the quality processes in manufacturing. All these are applications which are already there in real world, right? So therefore, artificial intelligence is not something a theoretical concept, right? The world is already adopting them, and we are seeing already the applications of them. And so where are we seeing these AI applications? If we look at the industries, right, at a very high level, these applications can be found across spectrum. So it is not specific only to one particular industry, but all industries are adopting them. For example, if you look at banking, right, the fraud detection is one of the biggest challenges for the financial institutions, right? And therefore, leveraging some of the machine learning applications, they are automating the fraud detection mechanisms, because the transactions which happen in a banking world are in millions in number, right? So it's not humanly possible for anyone to manually monitor these transactions. So that is where you are applying machine learning based applications to detect the fraud automatically. Similarly, in the context of retail industries, right? For example, there was a scenario a few years back where I think one of the retail giants in US started sending promotional advertisements, right? And one of the fathers of a daughter observed that her daughter was getting recommended on pregnancy medicines. So he got infuriated and he actually filed a case against them. Why are you sending pregnancy related content to my daughter who is going to school, right? And it turned out that she actually became pregnant later on, right? So how did the retail giant came to know about her pregnancy even before the daughter know about it, or even before the father know about it, right? That is how the power of AI, right? You are able to now predict the outcomes, the future outcomes of them, and they can be used in a positive way. Of course, there are negative applications as well, right? But irrespective of that, you can understand that how the retail industries are currently adopting uh, AI applications. And then, of course, then if you look at healthcare, right? Especially in the case of diagnostics that we are looking at. So typically, any diagnostics, any test that we undergo takes time, right? And that's one of the challenges the healthcare industry is facing. So leveraging image analytical capabilities. So now you can develop AI applications which can scan through, let's say, the X-rays, for example, or any such images which are taken as part of the diagnostics, and they can automatically detect and diagnose the problems. So you don't require a doctor, a qualified doctor, to go through them and then decide what the problem is. Right now, even the artificial intelligence solutions can do that on behalf of you. So that immensely reduces the time or the limitations of qualified doctors. So we see that. And of course, manufacturing, we'll talk in a few minutes. So similarly, you can look at even the travel and hospitality industries, right? Especially when we look at the e-commerce sites, for example, the recommendation engines. How, for example, Amazon is recommending the products to you. How does it know what are your preferences and therefore what are your future requirements? So there is an artificial intelligence engine behind that which makes these recommendations. So you see these sort of applications already across industries, and therefore it is very relevant, right? That we learn about artificial intelligence, not just only from a manufacturing perspective, but also have a wider perspective as well. So we are talking about AI, right? But what is the purpose of adopting AI, or what is it that AI helping us here? If you just take a pause here, think about it. Our day-to-day lives, right? Be it as an individual or be it as a business entity. For example, it could be you, it could be me, or it could be even, let's say, the Ambanis of the world, or even it could be the right prime minister of this country. Everybody has to take decisions in their day-to-day lives, right? So some of those decisions could be minor, or it could be very strategic in nature. That means the impact is going to be pretty high. So irrespective of that, if you look at every point in our lives is always about taking decisions. And these decisions, the biggest challenge while taking these decisions is that at the point of taking decisions, we do not have sufficient information, right? We always live with insufficient data, and based on that data, we take decisions. For example, if you look at the a simple example like college going students, right? So your next objective is to choose your career paths. So if you're doing, for example, if you're pursuing an engineering, and then now you may have to take a decision whether you want to pursue your career in the engineering field itself, or do you want to shift into IT industry? Okay, so now that is a big decision, right? So it's a strategic decision, because once you take that decision, it is very difficult for you to reverse that, right? So strategic decisions are pretty impactful in that sense that once you get into that direction, reversing that decision is very difficult, or it's going to be very costly for you, right? So these strategic decisions everyone takes, right, at every level. Like I said, it could be you, it could be me, or it could be even the prime minister as well. Similarly, the tactical decisions. So the tactical decisions are, yes, once you take a strategic decision, then you have to implement, or you have to pursue that decision, right? So therefore you make a midterm planning, right? Like for example, if you decide that you want to take a career in IT, you want to pursue a career in IT. So the next question that you want to probably look at is therefore, okay, what IT courses or what IT skills I should develop, right? And then once you decide that, so that is going to be the tactical decision, because now you're going to spend your, let's say, next 6 months or 1 year learning this course, right? So that is a tactical decision in nature. But again, when you are taking these decisions, you always look at the data, right? So for example, if you want to decide about taking a career in IT industry, so the obviously the information that you look at is, okay, what are my career opportunities, what are my growth opportunities, right? So that is the information that you will look at, and based on that information you will take a decision. But obviously, do you know everything? Do you know for sure that if you pursue an IT career, then so this is the place you are going to be in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, or this is how much salary you are going to get, right? That kind of information is never clear to you, right? So we always take our decisions with insufficient data, and that is where the real challenge is, right? So you have insufficient data or limited amount of data for taking any decisions, but we take decisions, right? So that means there is a risk involved with those decisions. And like I said, so the decision related to individuals could be right, still minor, but if we extrapolate this to the larger organizations, the business entities, like for example, a manufacturing plant like Kia, right? If they want to start a manufacturing plant in India, so they need to decide on the location where they have to set up that plant, right? And this is a strategic decision, because once they set up the plant, it is impossible for them to undo it, right? And they invest crores of rupees in setting up, and therefore they have to decide very precisely where they need to put it. But then what is the decision, what is the data that they look at while taking these decisions? Okay, so why should I place, let's say, my plant in a particular location? So it depends on the market size. It depends on the, okay, what is the future market, right, in that particular area. And therefore keeping your plant in a strategic location could enhance or generate or manufacture your cars, right, for example, pretty fast, and supply them to, let's say, the south region, entire south region, pretty fast, right? But then again, the information here is all very probabilistic in nature, right? For example, who is going to say what is your market size is going to be, or who is going to say how many cars you are going to sell in the next decade or so, right? So this is all very unknown information. So because of these things, the decisions will typically make or break any industry, right? So the way, while some of these organizations succeed, the other organizations, right, will drastically fail, and therefore they run into huge losses. So this is where the artificial intelligence or the machine learning, right, solutions come into picture. They are here to augment our decision making capabilities, so they help us take decisions in much faster and much effective way, simply because they have the capability to process huge amounts of data, right? And so they can find the patterns within the data that we as humans probably cannot find. So using these patterns, these applications will enable the decision making in a much more effective way, right? So for example, if we look at these the setting up a plant, manufacturing plant, when we talk about it, some of the applications like network optimization solutions in artificial intelligence, right, they will help you to identify what could be the right locations. Or similarly, if you want to look at, let's say, who, once I set up my plant, who should I purchase my supplies from, right? Because as a manufacturer, if you are making cars, you are not going to make every component of that car, right? You will purchase parts or components of that, like for example tires, right? Or even engines. Some of these things can come from another supplier, and you are doing the assembling here, right? So therefore choosing the right suppliers is also a very tactical question, right? So where that is where you use supply chain analytics to identify the right suppliers for you. So all these different solutions that you build using artificial intelligence help you make the right choices, make the right decisions. And this is where the artificial intelligence or the machine learning is going to play a huge role. And as I said, because it's all our lives is about decision making, and therefore now you understand, right, how AI and ML can impact the way we live, right? Okay, so we understand how AI or ML can help us, but then why is the buzz about this AI ML now, or let's say for the last few years that we have been hearing a lot about AI ML, right? But obviously, decision making is something is as old as the human race itself, right? So what is that has changed now that we have been hearing about AI ML? Like if you see some of those staggering statistics, like 15.7 trillion is the estimated GDP, right? That will be generated because of AI alone. Similarly, you see, right, the top technological surveys that you do, everyone is saying that AI is one of their priorities. So it is appearing to be in the top 5 choices of the industries, right? So why is it that so much of focus right now, and why everyone is talking about AI ML now, right? So there are basically 2 reasons why we are hearing about it now. One, it's about the data, and the second is about the capability to process the data, right? So if you see that now, the data that is being generated, that is being monitored, that is being stored, right? The technological advancements made it possible that we can handle huge volumes of data. So now you have, for example, sensors which can capture every transaction or every operation that you're doing in a manufacturing plant on a microsecond basis. So you have that capability to capture data at microsecond level of information. Or if you look at the internet itself, right, the volume of data that is being generated now is enormous, right? So as I said earlier, so decision making is all about you leveraging the data that you have, and then processing that data, analyzing that data, and then taking decisions, right? So therefore, the more data you have, there is a good chance of making the right decisions for you, right? And that is where now, with the advent of big data technologies and all, so the data management is becoming much more easier, right? So this is one element. And of course, the second element is the capability to the process data, right? Once, of course, you have to capture the data, you have to manage the data, but then how are you going to even process the data, right? That itself is the challenge. And as you can see right now, as the years progress, not only the CPU cost, right? Even now the GPUs are becoming much more affordable, and then we are also talking about TPUs, right? So all these processing capabilities means that we have the tools available to process this data in a much more cost-effective way, and therefore you can build solutions, right, in a much more cost-effective way. So these are the 2 reasons why now we see that everyone is talking about AI and ML. Okay, so we understood a little about what AI can do, how it is going to help AI, right? But then now let us get into the definition of what is artificial intelligence and how ML is different from artificial intelligence, right? So as you can see, everywhere, typically you see the words AI and ML together. So the question that immediately comes to our mind is, okay, what is the difference between them? Why are they always used together? So there is a subtle difference. We will look at it. But let us take a pause for a few seconds, and let me ask you this philosophical question, right? So what is intelligence? If you were to define intelligence, what do you think it is, right? I'll just take 5 seconds. Think about it, right? What is intelligence according to you? So we will come back to that. But then once you think about intelligence, then the next question that we want to address is, okay, what is artificial intelligence, therefore, right? So there are 2 perspectives here. If you look at it, one is about thinking, right? So is it about thinking, or is it about acting? So where does the AI comes into picture, right? And then the other dimension that you look at it, so the horizontal dimensions you see in the picture, the top layer is talking about thinking, thinking capabilities, and the bottom one is talking about the acting capabilities, right? Then the other dimension, if you look at it, I mean, look at from a vertical perspective here, right? So one is about mimicking human behavior, right? And the other one is, no, it's not about mimicking humans, but it is more about work, acting, or thinking rationally. So the rationality is the driving force here rather than mimicking the human behavior. So these are the four dimensions that you look at it on which the definition of artificial intelligence comes into picture, right? So is it about, let's say, thinking for capabilities, right? So thinking alone is not sufficient, right? For example, yeah, let's say assume that you have an AI engine which can do all the thinking on behalf of us. But then if you are to take action, right? Even when the thinking is done by the machine, is it sufficient enough? Like, for example, let's say you are building a robot, right? So, and the robot is supposed to do, let's say, do a life-saving exercise in a fire accident. Now, what is the use if it does all the thinking on behalf of you, but it is left to you that you go and rescue the person, right? Is it really sufficient enough? It is not, isn't it? So that is the reason why thinking alone is not sufficient here. So intelligence is not just about, thinking. It is also about acting, right? And therefore, artificial intelligence is not just about thinking. But then now, is it mimicking the human behavior, right? So that is the next question. But then if you think about humans, do humans always, you know, act rationally? So humans do not always act rationally, right? We always take decisions, not always, or most of the times we take decisions based on the emotions, right? For example, you may take decisions out of anger, out of, fear, out of sadness. So there are always emotions which drive you. So mimicking humans, therefore, is also not, the good way to do it. So artificial intelligence is about, acting rationally, right? So what is rationality here? So rationality, if you look at it from a generic perspective, right? It's all about looking at the options available to you at any particular moment of time in an objective way, and then taking the best choice out of those options, right? With whatever limited choices that you have, with whatever constraints that you have, within that you take the best optimum choice, right? So that is acting rationally. So it's not about uh, driving taking decisions emotionally, right? So that is where AI solutions, so basically when we talk about the intelligence here, it is about perceiving and then learning, perceiving the world around you and collect data from that and then learn from that data, right? And then you also need the reasoning capabilities. Okay, you have learned the patterns from it, and then you also need reasoning capabilities, and finally, based on the logical reasoning that you have, you act rationally, right? So this is the gamut of artificial intelligence. So therefore, as I said, so there are four components here, right? One, you perceive the world, and then you learn from that world, and then you apply logic behind that, and then you act, right? But now let us look at, let's take the example of a child, right? So how does the child, right, evolve? So can we say that children who are just born, can we say that they are intelligent, right? We never say that, right? Any child that you look at, you don't start talking about, let's say from day one, okay, this is an intelligent child, right? Obviously, because the intelligence develops over a period of time, and therefore, what is the foundation for developing your intelligence? You will first start as a child, right? Start observing the world around you. So you just observe the kids, what do they do, right? The moment they start wake up, right, they sleep a lot, but then whenever they are right, awake, all they do is keep observing, right, the entire world. So they keep collecting the data, right, from the world. That is the perceiving that we are talking about. And then they start learning patterns. Like, for example, the first time a child looks at a fire, right, he or she doesn't know what to do with it, right? The moment they put their hand in it, they will learn from that, okay, that experience. Okay, fire burns. So then the next time onwards, what is the action they take? Okay, stay away from fire, right? So that is the acting they do. So therefore, this is the cycle that you see. The learning cycle is the first foundation of developing your intelligence. And this is what the machine learning is all about. Okay. So the machine learning, when we say in the context of AI and machine learning here, right? So it is the foundation of developing that artificial intelligence capability, right? So the gamut of machine learning applications that you see is all about perceiving and then learning from the data and then taking action about it, right? So the fourth component here, which is the critical one, is developing that faculty of reasoning, right? How do you therefore develop the logical skills here to interpolate, to extrapolate the data that you have and from the experience that you have, and then, right, connect the dots? Because like I said, you will not have information always available to you, right? So you have to connect the dots between them, and then you then conclude with a reason, right? So that reasoning capability is what artificial intelligence brings. So this is the major difference between AI and ML. Okay. And as you can see, therefore, the current world is making a lot of progress in machine learning, and we are still in the nascent stage in artificial intelligence, because developing some sort of, the reasoning capabilities and to be able to take that kind of decisions is still some way to go. And that is the reason why Robo.1, Robo.2, right? We see that smart robots which are almost act like humans, right? Because they have that reasoning capability. So that is some time to go, right? We don't really need to be scared of Robo 1 or Robo 2 right now, right? So right now the world is still in the phase of, right, how do we make machines that can learn much faster, right? And therefore the machine learning applications is where we see a lot of advancement right now. But of course the world is making progress in the artificial intelligence world too. So as I mentioned just now, right? So therefore the four components that if you look at it, so the perceiving and the acting components, right, are typically therefore applications you build using the software, and therefore they fall under the domain of software engineering. So when I say perceiving, right, for example, that means you are collecting data and you are storing data, right? So this is all the database management that we talk about. How do you collect, be it, let's say, the numbers. For example, if you install sensors, that means using IoT techniques, right? So that means how do you collect the information from sensors? Or it could be data. So these numbers that we talk about is typically called the structured data, right? Because you can visualize it more like a tabular information, right? The Excel that you have, where you have the rows of data, columns of data. So typically numbers always have a structure in which how do you collect the data. But then when you look at speech or text or videos or images, these are called unstructured data, because you cannot put any particular structure to this data, right? So this is unstructured data. But then you also collect the information, right, before doing any analysis. So therefore you have a lot of applications for collecting and storing and managing this data, right? So that's the software component. Similarly, the acting component, right? That means once you learn about it, once you have a reasoning capability, you take decisions, you have to implement that decisions, right? Like for example, when you're taking a picture, the face recognition software is a AI application. Let's say the AI tells you where the face is, right? And after that you have to put, let's say, a rectangle around your face. Okay, so you don't need any intelligence there, right? The one which is putting the rectangular box in the screen is actually a software. That is the acting part of it, right? Okay, you recognize the face and the AI engine tells these are the pixels that represent your face. That's where the AI engine work stops. But then the acting part, or where you actually show that rectangle around your face, is a software, right? So that acting part is done by the software. So the core data science, or where the recognizing your face or the pixels which are represented which are representing your face, right? So that detection happens through a machine learning algorithm, right? So this component, the learning faculties and the reasoning faculties, are the data science component of it. And therefore, as I said earlier, the learning is one of the critical foundations of this whole four pieces that we are talking about. And right now, So this is where the world is making, right, a lot of advancements, and the machine learning that we see always revolves around it. And therefore, let us delve a little more into the learning component of it here. So when we talk about learning, therefore, there are two ways in which we normally learn, right? A static learning and a dynamic way of learning. So what is static learning here? That means you are collecting the information. You already have a lot of information, and you look at all this information, and from this information, you conclude, you summarize, right? And you learn it. So the best example of static learning is the way we always learn in schools and colleges, right? So what are we learning in school and colleges? So the content within the textbooks that you have is actually evolved over a period of hundreds of years, right? So the formulas that you read about, the text that you are reading about is not something which has come in the last 1 year or so, right? All this is something people have experienced, and people have found new things, discovered, and this happened over a period of hundreds of years. But all that is now summarized into your textbooks. So, and we are fortunate enough to learn that hundreds of years of experience, right, within 1 or right 2 years, right?